Just checking. Okay, so we're live. Hello everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Alison, and thank you guys for joining in. Sorry that we took a few minutes off the scheduled time. We're ready to go now. Yeah, so basically today I have an amazing host, sorry, an amazing guest speaker who's gonna introduce himself in a bit. But just in case you don't know who I am, my name is Alison Eyo. I currently work as product designer for payments and Money Point. But for the context of this conversation, I'm the product owner behind Reina UI. Yeah, so today with me, I have one of the people who probably one of the most knowledgeable people I have on design systems here with me. He's known to you all as Design Chief Priest, but his name is Michael. We'll be talking about the power of design systems for growing teams. Yeah, so Michael, please do us the honors of introducing yourself.
Okay, yeah. So it's good to be here. So my name is Michael, or as you guys probably know me on X, Design Keepers. So I'm a product designer, and I've been designing for about 7 years. Um and I recently, I think my last role, I finished building the Hermes design system, and it was very impactful for the company. And it was something that helped the company get up to, I think the company ended up having one of the highest revenues in its history based off of that. I think the I think for me my one concept is, I'm a designer that likes to do a lot of stuff. But I think for the context of this kind of conversations, we're talking about design systems, so I guess I'll just stick to design system. But yeah, so it's just good to be here.
Amazing. Great to have you, Michael. Just before we go on, I can see in the comments somebody saying she can't hear or see anything. Can you guys confirm you can hear and see us clearly? Just to be sure it's not the setup. That's the problem. Um, awesome.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, guys. So Michael, I know we have a lot to cover today, but I want us to basically set up like context of this conversation first. I think the first question that I want to ask is, what does scaling, what does scaling design at speed mean, and why do you think it's important for growing teams?
Okay. Yeah. So I think in terms of uh design systems mostly, yeah. I think the context of scaling a design system is essentially the ability to grow your operations around designer efficiently while trying to maintain the best quality as possible. So that means trying to find a balance between impact on product, trying to find a balance between speed and consistency, and also trying to make sure that you balance the need of the design system in terms of how it supports the overall business objectives, and how it improves the experience for customers across the platform.
Great, awesome, thank you. Okay, now that you have given us a bit of context, now what do you think are the most common issues with scaling that teams kind of encounter as they are starting out or as they are growing?
Okay. Yeah, so I think one of the most common problems teams tend to experience is inconsistency. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever there are cases where you have multiple components in the same library, and then you end up using components that are not accessible. Like there are lots of things that come into play, and you have multiple people using different spacing here, different padding here, and at the end of the day, what it kind of does, it just makes the whole infrastructure look messed up because there's no
Mm-hmm.
system in place to kind of guide. Okay, fine. If you are going to use buttons, you use this particular button. If you're going to use colors, use this particular color. So you could just, I think the main problem, the most common problem is inconsistency. So
Mm-hmm.
you have sometimes if it's not also documented well. You could have someone creating multiple components at, just for one particular action, which ends up making the whole library feel very bloated. And
Mm-hmm.
and one thing I've learned about the design system so far is if your library is big, it's harder to manage. So the smaller the library, the easier it is to
Easier
manage. So
to manage.
just try to make sure it's small. But if you don't have that kind of structure, it's going to be very hard for you to kind of scale your design system.
Awesome. I heard you speak about components, and I want to just catch you there real quick before we go any further. Do you want to give us like an idea of the core components that a design system should, or a good design system should have, like the ones that basically act as like the core components of a design system, and how do they basically work together? So, what are they, and like why would you say they are core, basically?
Okay, yeah. I think I would like to probably look at it this way, yeah. For a design system, you kind of think of it from let's say from a foundation level before you get into the area for components. So from a foundation level, you have your colors, you have your
Mm-hmm.
typography, you have your spacing, you have your border radius. So these are the core parts of the design system, typography and colors and the rest. So once you've defined those, your spacing values and the rest, then you can now get into like your components, like your buttons and the different parts of it. So I would say I'll kind of think about it this way. I would think about it in terms of your foundations, then you get into your components because your components taking values from the foundations you've set. So if you have your typography, so obviously if you have your buttons, you have your accordions, you have your pop-ups and the rest. So all of them will take values from the foundation. So your foundation is where like it's the core of the entire design system. So when you go into things like colors, that's where you look at things like your design tokens, for example, for your colors. You can have your color tokens, you can have your spacing tokens. And the essence of all of this is just to make sure at the end of the day, when you actually move to working with your engineering team, you have something set up that matches that is a bit close to what they have. It's a bit easier for them to work with the system you have set up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Awesome. I heard you spoke a lot about like components and atoms in the context of design. I really want to ask this. How will design system now help with the cross-functional collaboration between designers, developers, the entire product team, Sha? How does it then, tie into all of that?
Okay, yeah. So I think the major way it's going to help is just trying to have like a shared documentation. Yeah. So
Mm,
what this means is like I think at my last company, what I did was to essentially build up like an AI tool. Now the essence of that AI tool is essentially for engineers to be able to ask questions and okay, fine, this is where this component is because I've had issues where an engineer doesn't know a component is already built, both from a design perspective and also from an engineering perspective. The engineer doesn't know that the component is built, so he ends up going to build it out. So if there is a YAB docs, it's easy for people to come and say, okay, fine, this is the documentation. Then once you now go into your docs, you now have like your guidelines. Hey, I'm not supposed to use this button with this other button. So I think that's essentially how I'll kind of put it. So kind of have your shared language across the entire system. you have an easy handoff process. So that way you're able to also hand off to engineering faster, and
Mm-hmm.
also just I think it's just faster prototyping, because I kind of notice here when you don't have a design system, you're always trying to look at multiple mood boards. You're trying to say, okay, do I take this from here? Do I take this from here? And at the end of the day, the way design works is you could wake up today, you don't like what you see. And there's this tendency to say, okay, if I want to change, I want to
Switch
change
it
that.
up.
But at the end of the day, design undergoes constant improvement. When there's a system in place, that system locks you in. I do not have to change this just because I feel like. There has to
Mm-hmm.
be a reason for you to want to change that particular button. Is it going to improve um uh is it going to improve the UX across the platform? Is it going to improve accessibility? Now, you also think of what's the impact of me changing this across. So when there's a system in place, it kind of puts you in a box, which some people might say it's not really good if you're boxed in as a designer. But at the end of the day, these are like set of rules, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I tend to say before you start to build out your design system, you have something like you have like a how would I put it? You have like an experiment where you kind of have the freedom to do all of those explorations you want to do. Then when you start actually building out the design system, I have picked what is going to work for this business, and I've picked
Mm-hmm.
what works best, what's going to work best with the engineering team, and I've picked what works best for our users. So I'm going to stick with this. So that way,
Mm-hmm.
what happens is when another designer comes in and they say, "Hey, can you design this feature?" They're essentially designing from your component library. You're not going to see someone designing. You have your homepage looking like Instagram. Then you now have your
Mm-hmm.
settings page looking like it's from X or TikTok. So just again, shared consistency across everything. I think that's what I would put it.
That's amazing. Great. I think another question. So, just before you go on, Michael, I just want to say, I can see somebody dropped a question on the chat of this call. So, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on the comments. We will address them at the end of this session. Thank you guys very much. All right, Michael. Next question from me is design systems. How does it help with preventing design debts and actually like ensuring consistency, like in the we've had a lot of buzzwords, like in reality, because you have a lot of hands-on experience, how does it actually, like in real life, like how does it actually work, how does it actually help to ensure consistency and prevent design debt when you're building products?
Okay, so the whole I think when it comes to preventing design debt, I think the fact that you have components that can be used
Mm-hmm.
for anything you want to do makes it very, very fast. So it's more like this. Let's say you want to ship a particular feature, and you have like 2 weeks to ship that feature. Now, because you have a design system in place, you do not need to create something new. Now, of course, that saves you time because you already have all the components in place. So kind of saves that kind of make sure you don't have lots of debt to clear. Then also, in terms of having your docs, what happens is this: in teams where there are different products, yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
there's clear documentation, you could be working on one part of the product, and someone is working on another part of the product, and at the end of the day, once you guys come back, the both features look the same because they share the same language, they share the same rules across. I think that's one part to look at. Also, then also it kind of reduces back and forth where
Mm-hmm.
someone says, I don't like how this navbar looks. So all these things always happen when there's no system in place. You see, someone says, okay, I like how this navbar looks. Can you add the radius? Why are we adding the radius? What's the reason for that radius? It might seem like very, very minor stuff, but at the end of the day, when you kind of look at how teams work, you kind of see sometimes you get into calls where you you're having a conversation about very tiny things that have already been defined in the design system. So
Mm-hmm.
when someone comes and says, okay, fine, hey, I want us to change this, you'll be like, no, we already have this defined. That way, you don't really have to. That again, there's no design there to just move fast. You're able to speed through stuff quickly. Then anything you need to change, it's going to be something you have to decide. Okay, is this something that we're going to reuse across the product again? Because there are times when you're designing something, maybe your components don't really can't really show off that particular functionality very well, and you need to, like say, you need to kind of create a new component. But most of the time, if your component has the base, like your base component, you're just essentially creating that new component from what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's let's say for example, you are a company that does mostly 2D, then for
Mm-hmm.
some reason you're now moving to 3D. Now, most likely your component library will not have components that kind of support that. So obviously you have to kind of integrate that into your whole process. So again, I think it just yeah it just provides that structure, that overall structure, to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
okay, whenever someone wants to build something, there's a defined place, there's a defined library where they can pick components, there's clear documentation with instructions, and you don't have there's this thing we say on Nigerian Twitter, Oga centered design, where you get you your boss wakes up and say, hey, I want to change this. No, there is a design system. You need to kind of go through. But again, I think it's just having that overall structure that makes it easy.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. I can see the questions in the comments. Please keep them coming. We'll address every one of them before the end of the call. I think this is where you start to show us things because many of us here want to actually see everything from how your workflow happens to how you structure your components and like the entire documentation and everything else. So this is what I'm gonna ask you this just before we get
Mhm.
right into that is what's your recommended approach for implementing a design system from convincing your team because that's where the main problem is convincing your team usually if it's a startup who doesn't believe in wasting time to devote to that from the initial like team buying to full on adoption with development team what do you recommend is the best way to go about that.
Okay. Yeah. So I think one thing one thing I kind of look at is this before you decide you want a design system, kind of look at the size of the project. Yeah. And now the thing now is this most companies can do well if you just have a component library. Like
Mm-hmm.
most very small companies, you can do well if you just have a component library. But if you decide you want to have a full scale design system, it's also good. Now, the process I would say I would kind of look at this is it's where you kind of do an audit. What are the common problems you guys are having? Do you have lots of inconsistency? Is it like there is a break in communication between? Because I feel like the most common thing that happens is you might have a proper component library in Figma, but
Mm-hmm.
there is a break in communication between design and engineering. So now this is where you need to decide, okay, fine. You discuss with the engineering team, what is the best way for me to provide these assets to you or these guidelines to you so you know so it's easier for you to work with and it's easy for you to implement exactly what you see. Now, the hardest part about building a design system is most most startups like to move very fast
Mm-hmm.
because of the kind of the ecosystem we're in and all of that. And so being able to convince them, hey, I need 2 to 4 weeks to build something when there are a list of features you need to build. So again, I think overall it just I always tend to say show, you should not tell. And now what I mean by that is this: you kind of show your PM or you show your boss, anybody that is in charge of making those core decisions. Hey, this is how this stuff is going to help us. Like for us, when I decided we wanted to build the V2 of our design system, which
Mm-hmm.
required having to do like a full overhaul of everything. I think one important thing that I did was showing engineer, okay, fine, this is how we are going to use Shatien components. Shatien has a library. all I have to do is essentially create the library in Figma. And once I create a library in Figma, you're able to copy the components directly from Figma. So sorry, directly from Shatsi directly. So you're working, you kind of made the whole experience better as opposed to having my engineering team going to build custom components. Because as of that time, they for the previous design system, they built tons of custom components. So the whole idea was, okay, how can we make this experience better? So the handoff experience was way better. The communication, since I had the docs as well, docs also kind of explained the process way better. Yeah.
Sorry, Michael, I'm still here. I stopped hearing you.
Okay, no, I was saying okay, what was that thing you heard?
You just started breaking up, talking about components, and I didn't hear you. I don't know if it's me or like you, but I didn't hear you for like last maybe 15 seconds.
Okay, okay, yeah, I was there. So let me go again. So what I would say is um one thing I did for where I worked previously at Breeze was essentially being able to show engineering this is how this is going to work. And it's a
Mhm.
bit it's a bit tricky if you don't have dev experience because you can't really communicate with your engineering team very well. Which is why I always tell I always like to tell those that do design most. I always say it's good to just work with engineers, talk to them. Your When it comes to implementing design systems, your engineers are your best friends. There's always, I don't know, I think in some startups, there's always this slight rift between product and engineering. Sometimes product wants to do something. Engineering says, no, it's going to take 2 days, 3 days, and all of that. So there's always this rift. But I feel like when you get to a point where you find this balance between your your product workflow and your engineering workflow, it makes it way better. So I think for me, what I did was essentially show them, hey, if you're going to use ShadCN, we should essentially stick to what they have. That way, it just makes sure that my engineering team does not have to build custom components because once engineering has to build a lot of custom components, it takes a lot of time. And that was where I had to find a balance between, hey, do I want this product to look perfect or do I want us to build based on speed and functionality? And my context
Yeah.
is I wanted speed and functionality. So that's why sometimes personally I would look at my personal designs and I would look at the design system and like I could have done this way better, but because I was trying to find a balance between okay, fine, we need to build something. I don't want to allow my personal bias as a designer get in the way of us building.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say, okay, fine, let's build up with Shadsi and minimal customization that just fits what we have for the brand. Then
Mm-hmm.
we just keep building. Then if there are any updates, we can make those updates incrementally. Because designers get stuck in their head most of the time where you want to do it your way, but you kind of
Yeah.
need to figure out your engineering team needs to build and custom components more time. That's the point. So the less custom components your engineering team has to build, the better for you. Then you guys can do like incremental updates.
Amazing. So now my next question is tied to what you just said, but it's also tied to a question from the audience. I think I'm going to take that question first. Wait,
Okay.
which one should I take first? I'll take mine first because I can. Anyways, how so now I think this is a real life scenario for me, especially. I've had this experience before. I think before I got to have the knowledge of systems, I had gone through this thing before. It is one thing to convince developers, another thing to convince business does not care about your design system. Business just wants this thing to go live so they can probably raise funds or get 1 million users. They don't care about your flying buttons and your hover state. They don't give shit about all those things. But it is your process. You know that it's important for you and you know how it is important for business. So I'm going to take, you know what? I don't know which to take first. I think I'm going to take Till's question first. So Till is asking, how do you explain the importance of a design system to stakeholders and product owners? For context, how do you tell them no in favor of consistency, but do so convincingly? This is a two-part question, but you get what I'm trying to say. How do you
Yeah.
explain to them?
So which is so this is the part where I would go back to what I had mentioned previously.
Mm,
Your engineering team is your best friend. No matter what you do, if you want your design system, if you want like to build that consistency, your engineering teams, they are your best friend. Now, the whole idea is this: before, because now most people that are not really technical only understand the impact this stuff makes.
mhm,
Yeah. So the best way to do it is you have a call with your engineering team first, where you kind of walk them through. Okay, this is exactly what I'm trying to do. This is the experience. This is how this is going to improve the experience for us. Now, the business wants stuff to ship fast. Now you need to prove that this design system would reduce the number of back and forths we have, and it's going to make engineering ship faster. Now, and how do you prove to them that engineering can ship faster if you've not convinced the engineering team yet? So it won't be like you're on the call, you're saying one thing, your engineering team is saying something else,
mm,
which is why I said
exactly.
get your engineering team on your side first. Like, hey, we need to build this stuff. You can tell them, okay, fine. You you know how you used to build those custom components from scratch. You know, if you use this one, I can just copy and paste. So let's just talk. Let's make them your friends. They are your best friends in this conversation. Because I know again, business doesn't really care about those tiny details. You care about, you know, the things that happen when it doesn't happen. So once you get them on your side, if you have a PM, in my last room, we didn't have like a we didn't have like a we didn't have a PM for like almost a year or two. So it was me working directly with I would say my boss and the rest of the engineering team. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So again, convince the engineering team first. Again, of course, once you tell an engineering team, I would say for me, the experience I had was a bit tricky because I would say I got to a point where I was asking the engineering team to change the entire component library. So previously, the design system we built it was on Chakra UI, and everyone knows when you talk to engineers, let's switch libraries. It's a very hard ask. It
Yep.
was it was like one of the most difficult things because it's like you're telling them, hey, we are stripping the platform from the ground up, so we are going up, and it was very hard to ask. But at the end of the day, what happened was when we started to implement it, again, the first couple of weeks would obviously be slow because you're trying to like adapt and all of that. But once the speed picked up, this very, very fast. And now what kind of happened that kind of also even gave me an edge, which is why I said try to show them, not just telling them, because if you don't show people what that stuff is able to do, they won't really understand it. Was when we got to a certain point and I think there was an update to V0 and Cloud, which made it possible for them to be able to create components using still the same strategy I had suggested. So it was like this was build up my case. I was showing them, hey, this is what we can do. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
build components from scratch. If I design it and you don't have time to build it, I can build it because I can go into V0, do like a fast prototype, hand it off to you. You you can easily add it to what we have because this is essentially strategy and I'm just giving you a component. You're just customizing it to fit what we have. You're not building from scratch. So that's the whole context. Again, show, and don't just tell. Because I feel like we tend to talk about it without showing. So once you show people this is what this experience is going to look like, then of course you get your engineering team on your side. Because even if engineering says no, they are not doing it, there is
No, that
absolutely nothing you can do.
you can do. Exactly.
So
Fair enough.
that's your
Thank you for that. So you guys heard that. Do a lot of showing. You don't need to shalaye if you have evidence to show that this will actually be important for business. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing, which is business. And my follow-up question is you have you've shown business, you're able to convince your CEO, whoever, to give you time to build or probably adopt an existing library. Now that you have used that for your sprint or for your product, I know you already mentioned some of them, but I think I'm going to ask so that in case you have any other ones that we really need to touch on. My question is, how do you now effectively measure your return on investment and impact on a design system or on a project that you use a design system to build?
Yeah, I think it's so usually for products, it's good to have key understanding of the metrics previously. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, let's say for example the essence of the new design system was to improve like how customers access a particular functionality in the platform. Yeah, and usually there are tons of analytics tools you can use. I think there's Hotjar, there's Full Story. Now, these tools kind of provide they kind of provide data that you're able to track and to okay, fine. After we implemented the design system, our churn rate dropped from 10% to 4%. So you're able to actually track those actionable metrics. So that's why I said before you kind of build up your design system, you have like an audit. Now that audit would consist of you checking what needs to be done, what where are the issues, where are we having issues. Then you also kind of track the data before that design system was built. You say, okay, fine, we have like 1,000 users, and actively we only have like 4 5 people out of 1,000 users, which is a very bad combination. So how do we get back these customers to actively use the platform? And you also check if okay, since I think once you're able to do that and you have all of those tools that provide those metrics to you, it's able to also track. And I think one thing is also in terms of things like revenue, for example, you can say okay, we've in the last 1 year we made X amount. And after we kind of started to build out this new design system, because and obviously now one thing about design systems is I always say it doesn't end just in the product itself. Now it cuts across marketing because your app cannot look one way and your marketing looks absolutely
Yeah,
different. There's
another.
no
Yeah.
consistency. So you kind of look at okay, fine. Since we changed our brand direction and since we started to position the product this way, this is the impact it has had. So from an engineering standpoint, I'm able to see for me for me when we started to build out the design system for me, it was quite it was scary. It was scary when engineering started to move very fast because what happened is I'm a single designer handling a design system and I'm doing a lot. And you have about 4 engineers, 2 to 4 engineers building very fast because you've set it up. So what that does is I'm in a spot where people are shipping very, very fast, but I had to like find the balance between okay, these guys are shipping fast. But I think obviously what tends to come in between is to kind of bridge that gap. And I'm just sharing this for those that are also working as a solo designer. Yeah, to bridge that gap, I kind of set up a design QA process in between.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you're able to kind of find the balance between building and when you're trying to ship. But at the end of the day, once you set up all of that, you are in a spot where you're able to build fast and you're able to also see your key metrics at the end of the first version of the design system. But the I would say in terms of trying to measure the metrics as well, I would say after you've done the first release of the design system, you can just slowly just keep track of the data. Always keep track of the data. I think uh there was one thing I had shared in our design systems documents, and I always find it funny anytime I read it. It's in God we trust. Every other person must bring data. So your data is important. Yeah. So I it just
Got-
data is the key metric. So once you're able to build your design system and you get to that point, okay, fine. The data says we are having more users. Cool. If the data says you're having less users, now you have to check, okay, is it a design system issue? Is it from the design or did our site's performance get slow? So that's where you need to be close to engineering to know, okay, fine. Okay, what happened was on the previous design system, we used to load our site in like 5 seconds. And now for some reason, maybe we added like heavy images, it's taking like 40 seconds. And for people in let's say in places that have very poor internet, let's say those people are part of your main customers. You're unable to serve them because it takes longer for your site to load, and human beings, we have a very short attention span.
That's
So
fine.
once it's loading, so again, those keys from performance, you need to know whether it's from your design, you need to know whether it's from the language. Because sometimes you might think, okay, this, I think for me, it's something I kind of also experience as well. Because for my previous role, it's a product that helps companies structure their equity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those terms for an average person, it's very vague. And I feel like the concept of equity, even for, let's say, someone in tech, the first time you probably hear anything about equity is when someone wants to hire you and the person doesn't want to pay you. You mention equity. I think that's the first time you probably hear about equity in your life. But again, it's way more than that. It's way more than that. So it, sometimes it could be the language you're using. So these are things you need to. So that's why I tend to tell teams it's better to work in a setup where every person is part of the same Slack channel where you guys communicate together in one spot, as opposed to breaking down each team into 200 channels. One team is here, one team is here. Nobody knows what's happening. So you kind of breaks the chain of communication. So it's easy for you to track when there's an issue. And so let's say someone could be on a sales call and they could tell you, okay, fine, we were on a call with a client and they didn't really understand what this meant. So again, you need to just track those key metrics. And there's also this in terms of tracking metrics as well. I also feel like there's always a slight friction on anything between product and marketing. Marketing wants to over explain. Product wants to keep it simple. And especially if it's a B2B business, it gets very, very tricky. And when you're looking at when you're trying to look at those as well, is I'd say I feel like there are so many parts to tracking metrics. So in order for you to actually effectively track, you need to be that person that you're in the center of everything. You need to get data from sales, you need to get data from engineering, you need to get data from marketing, you need to get data from the product itself. And so again, I feel like for metrics, I think I am a huge fan of metrics. I love to look at the data, what's happening, is this slow? And if you're someone that you're also very technical, you could also try to do some engineering work on your end and see how you can also improve and share with the engineering team. Oh, I saw this library that could make our page load 10 times faster. Can we add it or what? So again, I feel like that's how I'll kind of put it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Out of everything you said, the thing that I actually picked is in God we trust. Everybody else will read data because I'm using it on Monday morning during my design stand off. So,
Yeah.
anyways, thank you for that. I'm sure you guys have like gotten a lot more for us from this conversation. I'm really happy that we have you here. Again, I can see your questions. I promise we'll get to everybody. But if you have any questions, please feel free to again leave them as the comments on this call and we will address all of them. Okay, my next question is now this. We have spoken about how to convince your startup CEO or CTO to give you the money or give you the time to build a design system. Now that the company is scaling, you're probably hiring more designers, more developers. How do you maintain and evolve a design system as the organization is growing and as technology is changing as well?
Okay. Yeah. I think in terms of maintaining a design system, one thing I tend to do is I would always suggest having like a weekly audit. Now, Figma has like a version history. Yeah. Um, you're able to go through your version history. Although I would say that part is a bit more intensive. So I would say what you can do is before any update is pushed, you kind of keep track of the components that changed, so you know what changed. Um, One thing I did in my previous role was to build like a Slack bot. Now what happens is before I push any update to the design system, I always add a note. This is what I'm updating. That way, I'm able to see what update. So once I push an update to the design system, it sends the text on Slack. This has been updated, and it has like a line that says, "Okay, fine. This was what changed." That way, I have multiple ways to track. Okay, this week I changed this live. I changed this component. I changed that component. And if it gets to a point where other team members get into uh, if you get to a point where you have other team members now, you can now decide to have like a design system uh governance doc. So there's one I have. I think I'll probably share my screen. Let me kind
Okay.
of show you how it kind of looks. So the whole, let me know once it's staying. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think I can see it. Can you guys see his screen? I'm
So
assuming. But yeah.
okay, yeah. So again, you need to, like I said, this part is here. So it's just you kind of have like your rules, your design system governance rules. What it does is it essentially makes it um it sets up a structure for someone to contribute to it to a design system. So now here you can see description of the proposed change, the reason for the change, impact of that change on existing components, visual examples, if applicable, proposed timeline for implementation. The reason for this is so someone doesn't wake up and change something and you don't know something changed. And everybody knows okay, you need to follow these rules. That's one. Then once it's done, once let's say someone submits, you can now review if it aligns with your design principles, check if it's consistent with the existing design system. Because someone can just maybe there's someone curved button they liked somewhere, they now threw it in. So you just add it and it doesn't really work and it's not compliant with what you guys have. I can now test the usability and accessibility. And I feel like when it comes to accessibility, this is a part that a lot of people tend to skip. I would say both during implementation and also during design. Because let's say you're trying to implement a particular button. Now, your engineers might have implemented it, but they didn't add like an area label, for example. So for someone that's using like a screen reader, able to make the experience better for them. So you need to always also think about that. You also review its technical feasibility as well. Check the impact on ongoing projects because you might have a component that actually works, and if we add that component now, and we know in future we are going to deprecate the library that uses that particular component, there's obviously no need to add it. So you kind of also find that balance. So again, just setting a structure for everything helps the whole stuff scale when you have more people coming on board the team. Let's say you, you get to this point to discuss the proposal, provide feedback. Then again, I think it just lots of structure. Then the approval process, you can now decide to either approve or reject the change. If it's approved, you can add it to the backlog and it can be implemented. If it's not approved, then you can say, okay, fine. This is why we are not approving this change to the design system. Maybe at this point in time, it's not feasible or it's going to affect this particular component and we do not have the time to do those fixes. So it might work on the design side, but for engineering, they are not able to start to implement it. So in order to make sure you don't pack up, you don't start to have lots of things that have not been done. You make sure only the most important things scale through. So that's one way to kind of look at it. And when you look at implementation, once it's ready to implement, you implement the change with the timeline. Then you can now update your docs, code repos, and guidelines to reflect the change. Then once it's done, you can now communicate to everyone like, okay, fine, we've made all the adjustments based off of this change that's been requested. Then the next one, after the change has been made, this is where you kind of track what happens based off of that change that's been happened. Let's say after the change, you check the impact on the overall system, get feedback from users to see what that change has done. if needed, the team can make any changes and go through the entire review process again to just make sure that it stays consistent. Again, for most startups, this seems boring, but if you want to scale, if you want to scale, you need to go through it. That's the
Yeah.
overall context. So you would see here, because of what we have, you see we have like the channels where we kind of post like feedback on the when it comes to design system development. Then for QA, we do constant QA. So I always tend to say you should have like weekly audits. Once you have once you have like a a ton of designers working with you, or even if it's just you, have like weekly audits. So those weekly audits essentially track what has changed in the design system. Again, if you're working solo, if you're working on your own, most of this stuff doesn't really apply to you. Doesn't really apply to you because, of course, you are the person that would approve everything yourself.
Yeah.
So again, but the reason why this is here is again, if the team starts to scale up, you need to make sure you're not running around to start to figure out, okay, this is the structure I want this to take. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
build that structure, but now you just work on the. I think it's easier for you to manage the system on your own when you are trying to build solo. But once team scales, you need rules. You need set of structure, which is where this entire stuff comes in.
Okay. So there are two questions in the chat that are related to these. I'm going to just knock them off at the same time. The first one, I don't know if you want to answer them together. I don't tell you two of them. The first one is, how do we create documentation that will serve as a guide between designers and developers? And the second one is, you know what? It's not related. Sorry. That's the first
Okay.
one.
Okay. So how do you create a design system that works for designers and developers? So this is where I would fall back to what I've been saying on this call since
Mm-hmm.
is you need to make your engineering team your best friend. The reason is this: if you want to build a design system and so there's this thing that happens when someone could pick a UI library, for example, and you don't check if that library is consistent with what your engineering team is using. Let's say, for example, your engineering team is using something like let's say Chakra UI, for example, and you now, or let's say Shashat, for example, and you now decide to design your components. You don't care about how the library structures their components. What will happen now is there'll be a disconnect, because now what happens is your engineers are seeing H1 in your design, but Chakra or Tailwind might be telling them XS. So you're now forcing them to go and do the math. Where do I use this? Where do I use this? So you need to, before you write your documentation, talk to engineering teams, know the libraries they use. That's the most important part. Know the libraries they use. That way you build your design system to around the libraries they are using. Don't uh don't fall into this trap of saying we can use anything. No. Know the libraries they use. That way you build your system around it. That way it's scalable. And someone doesn't, because if you are a always I would say try to put yourself in the shoes of the engineer. If you are the engineer and you want to build something, someone has done handoff to you, and you're seeing H1 and in your code you're seeing XS, it's a lot of work mentally to kind of start to do all of that. And it's a bit different when it's things like pixels. Of course, there are tools that just do the whole conversions faster.
Mm-hmm.
Or things like the basic structure, your color token, the structure. So you could be using this color token standard, but Tailwind is having another naming system. So again, lots of disconnection. So you need to talk to engineering and make sure you structure your design system as close as possible to what they have. That way you're able to move very, very fast. And also, another thing that would also make life easy is trying to, again, if you guys have the time, there is this platform called Storybook. So Storybook essentially helps you build out like a front-end component library for each of the components. Yeah. So if there's time to do all of that, although for most startups, I know there is absolutely no time. You just essentially just build out those, have like a storybook component that is tied to that particular component you've designed. What that does is if someone comes to the your docs, for example, you're able to pick out the components that they want to use quickly, and they're able to move very very fast. So yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That really helps. For those who don't know what Storybook is, I left a link in the comment of this course so you can take a look as well. Okay, I'm going to take one more question from the chat before I go back to my list of questions. I know that we are running at the time slightly, but someone is asking, someone is asking, how does one get started in creating a design system and tend to get better? I'm assuming what he's asking is, how do you learn how to build one, not how do you build one in a team because of the tend to get better. So I don't know how you want to answer this question now. That's what the person
Uh,
asked.
is it like you're trying to build a design system solo for yourself? Is that the
Yes. In a case where you don't have experience building one before, I'm guessing that's what the person means.
okay? Okay, yeah. So for me, there's something that happened. I think in my from our which actually pushed me to design system first. When I joined, I had no idea I was going to build a design system. I was just let me see where this new road takes me. Um, and unfortunately, when you go to YouTube, YouTube does this stuff where everyone tells you a design system is your component library in Figma, which on its own it's misleading. It's quite misleading because when someone says a design system, I'm not talking about your component library in Figma. It's a lot more, which is why I don't know if it's going to be a bit tricky building on your own. Because I won't lie, unless your goal is to be you want to do something like Rena UI is doing, that's cool. The whole idea is if you want to get started, just look at smaller design systems. I feel like that's the best way to start. People tend to tell you look at material design, look at Apple's human interface guidelines, look at Atlassian, look at Adobe Spectrum. The problem with those systems is they're very good. They are very, very good, but they are too big. And those people have teams. They have teams building that stuff consistent. You are one person. You cannot, there is no possible way. The best you can do is maybe if they build an AI agent that gets to that point, you can do it on your own. But at this point, you are just one person. You're just one person. You are you just need to look at how the smaller design systems are structured. Get the most important parts of it. Get the most important parts of it. Then use it as a guideline to kind of think about how you structure everything. That way, I think what it will teach you is it will teach you how um how components are kind of arranged, the concept of foundations, then the concept of design tokens. I feel like the hardest part about design system is understanding design tokens. But once you get the basic concept, everything starts to make sense. That's okay. And now you won't really get it by watching videos. It's when you watch. Let's say I think I saw one video on YouTube that had something about design tokens. I can't remember which one, but if you're searching for design tokens, you will likely see content around it. You search for design system, that's when you start to see component library. So if you search for tokens, you learn more about it, then you read about it. Then once you start to read those tokens, because I think what happened to me was the whole concept of tokens was a bit confusing for me when I started because like, okay, what am I supposed to use for my global tokens? What am I using for my semantic code tokens? What am I using for my component tokens? How far do I need to go when it comes to tokens? Because they are, let's say if you look at Adobe Spectrum, they have like almost four levels. And you as a single designer, if you're doing four levels, I feel like it's absolutely impossible because They're able to do 4 levels because of the scale of their design system. It's gotten very big. So for ours, what I did was I just stuck to two, global and semantic. I wanted to go to component level, but engineering team was like, no, we don't have to do that. So I had to like step back. Okay, fine, let's just stick to these two, um, and try to build that. So you look at the smaller. So in terms of the smaller systems, you look at Pi.design. They're very good. They have a very good structure. Look at look at Maze. There's one called Ariandot by Maze. Then I think the other one is Burrito by Username. So once you look at those three, you kind of read through their docs. Pi.design explains tokens very, very well. You would understand the whole concept of tokens if you read their docs very well. I think that's one thing you can do. Then once you're ready, um, the next thing you need to do is start to build out your component library. You build out a component library in Figma. Once you're done and you need to document it, you move to a tool like Supernova.io. That's where I build out my docs there. So I don't know if I can pull up Supernova on this call, but the whole concept is you're able to, but let me just open their homepage so you guys get to see how it looks. So Supernova essentially lets you document your design system. So if you scroll, you see like there are different parts. So you can it has your color palette. It has so it essentially imports all of your design data to the platform and able to write your docs. That way, it's more structured. Then they have things called exporters. Uh, Depending on how technical you can get. So exporters are essentially they export your tokens to be available to your devs on GitHub or any other platform you use. So that way it exports your tokens from Figma to code. But for us, what I had to do was because I think for because I built on top of Shadcn, I had to build like a custom one, which kind of exports our tokens to match what's in Shadcn. Because Shadcn has its own color tokens and how it's named and all of that. But again, I would say basics. Learn the basics of design systems by reading docs. Learn more about tokens. The moment you get the concept of tokens, it makes everything way easy for you to understand. Then use a tool like you now build out your library in Figma, come to Supernova, then you set up the pipeline. So the pipeline essentially always runs. So anytime you make an update on your design system, it sends a pull request to GitHub. So now your engineering team is able to put it in. So let's say if you change your brand color to red and you've pushed the tokens to you've made the update on your design system, the essence of the pipeline it's able to pass those values now to your design system as a pull request. Then your engineers can now merge it and you have an update. So essentially you have like a proper structure around everything. So that's how I would put it. It's a bit complex. It's a bit complex, but I think once you start, you get to know how it works.
Awesome. That was a lot. I hope that that person was listening because I am going to have to rewind this video and get the details from you because it's really interesting to hear. So thank you for that. Now, the next part of this conversation is where we look at design systems from context of the future of design, the future of tech, the future of everything with AI in between. And I'm gonna start with somebody's question in the comment. This person is asking, wait, where is it? Yes. Would you say that design systems take out the creative process since you cannot reinvent the wheel?
So this is where I would say it's a bit dicey. Yeah, it's a bit dicey. Um,
Okay. Sensitive
when you are
topic.
the yeah, so when you are the one that built the design system, it doesn't take away the creative process. But once you come and meet it, it kind of takes it away. But now it's more like what is possible is you're trying to think within a box. That's what happens. And what I would say is, if you want to be very creative, what you can do is you do like a rough sketch or a rough concept outside of your design system. But once you want to implement it, you pick out components of your design system to try to match what you have as close as possible while still following your guidelines. That way, it doesn't really take off the design process. If you work in a fang, likely where there are tons of teams and the whole structure, you'll likely get bored because obviously there are strict guidelines of what has to be used where. So, but if you're the one that built it, you have that freedom the very first time you start building. To again, if you want to go wild, add 3D elements, all of this stuff. But again, if your engineering team can't implement it, there's no need. Which is why I always say in a, that's why you tend to see companies these days they tend to start hiring design engineers. And the concept of a design engineer is a design engineer is able to pick those tiny details that a dev will likely miss or ignore because they feel like it's not important. They would a design engineer would be like, no, I like this stuff and I want it to be there. So that's why you see companies like Verso, Clerk, and they have very badass designers and they're hiring design engineers because those tiny details are I think these days with um how AI is moving, those tiny details becomes the key things that kind of make your product stand out. What are those tiny macro interactions that happen? What does what does the product feel like when you use it? What's that vibe it gives you? Do you feel happy when you use the product? Do you feel stressed? So again, those tiny details are the things that come in. But like I said, if you're the one that built it, you love the creative process behind it. But if you come and you meet it, you feel like the box thing. I felt that way when I joined my first company because all they had was the compiler library, and you always force it felt like I was forced to use what already existed. And now the problem with that is this. The problem with that is this, especially if you're coming as a solo designer and you're coming to meet that is stakeholders might kind of assume you're not being creative, but they've essentially put you in a box. So no matter what you do, it's still going to look like exactly the same thing because it's a system. There's a system in place, and you're not trying to break it. So I think that's why before we actually started to build a design system, even the first version of the design system I shared, we had this point where we essentially decided, let's do an experiment outside of our existing company life. Let's just design like how we visualize the platform in future. Just ig- ignore what we have. That way, it provides the spot for you to be a bit more creative. And that way, I think what happened was when I was able to show them, hey, this stuff I've been boxed in for long. This is essentially what's happening. I was boxed in, and now you just feel like you open the cage. I'm like, okay, yeah, go, just do your stuff. And I think that's why I always tell companies, give your designers room to be creative. Yeah, and but now being creative doesn't mean you need to break rules every time. So essentially, so that's more adjustment you want to make. It could still be something you could say, okay, fine. Well, when I join, this stuff looks like this, but I feel like if we do it this way, it's still going to work. While you also consider like everything is going to require to change stuff. So I think that's the whole context. But again, when it's I think it's again it I would say for teams that are smaller, it's more flexible to make those key changes faster. For teams that are a bit bigger, you need to pass tons of company politics, bureaucracy, all of that. So there's a there's always a is it I think that's why I said it's a very dicey question. You can be creative, you cannot. So it just depends on where you find yourself, who built it, or did he build it, or you're the person that met it how it was, and how flexible is the system, how open is the team to changes. because there are teams that they've sworn that they will never make any change. This button, no matter what happens, 1 pixel should not shift from it. So again, it comes down to the company, it comes down to you, it comes down to the team, most especially the team
Mm-hmm.
and your engineering team, because you could decide to design the best thing after sliced bread, but your engineering team builds
They're not
beans for
buying.
you.
They're not.
So it just so it's just the whole concept, yeah. But I think I would say it's a very fun process. Building design
Mhm.
system makes you very it makes you think from a very technical standpoint. So when you're implementing stuff, you're not just thinking about Figma. If I'm coming on a project for a client, I'm not just thinking about Figma. I'm thinking about all around. I'm thinking, okay, fine. If we decide we want to add a Rive component now
Mhm.
versus Lottie, Rive is smaller than Lottie. But in terms of timeline, someone can probably build something in Lottie. Someone that is a very new person can probably build stuff in Lottie faster than Rive. Now, again, this is where you kind of consider, okay, fine, what's what's the fastest way to build this stuff? Do I need to just design a quick GIF and throw it in? Do I need to use a video? Do we need to make this stuff interactive? So I feel like there's multiple parts. So you can be creative in lots of ways. It just depends. It just makes you it just puts you in a spot where you're able to um either build fast. I would say build fast, and in some companies build fast and break things maybe. But yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Thank you, Michael. That's a very dicey question because there's no correct answer. But I wish you all the best in your whatever it is you're doing. Anyways, I want to answer this question from the audience real quick before I go back because I feel like it's one that even I need an answer to.
Okay.
And this person says, "How do you handle side projects in the same way using a design system where you just where you are just creating components as they fit the project scope?" Now, for just to
Mm.
break it down a little more, this typically just means that the product is not as fleshed out. So we are experimenting with every damn thing. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So here's how I'll put this. Yeah. So it depends on how flexible you are. So usually for most side projects, they probably not. It depends. So you're probably not gone as far as as trying to build out like a how will I put it? You've probably not gone as far as the dev side. You've not started the engineering part of the project as it is. But the thing is, once one thing about design is once engineering has started work, that's where hey, there are things you can't start to switch.
Can't move around.
Engineering can't start to move around because timelines are important. So what I would say is this: there are key components that if you build, think of your the whole atomic design system structure. You have your atoms, you have your molecules, you have all of that. Now, for if you build out those tiny parts of your system, you have literally every single thing you need to build anything. To be honest, when you actually think about it, you don't have that. You don't need to have 200 atoms. The very basics you have enough. Your buttons, if you have a button and you have your models, yeah, like you have the core parts of it. If you look at something like, let's say, you look at something like let's say, I think, let me share my screen. I think that'll probably be easier to kind of
Yeah.
pass it across so you get what I'm trying to say. So let's say I go back to this point. Yeah, let me go to our docs. Yeah, if I go to our components, I have I already have all our components here. So you have the accordion, you have the alerts, alert dialogues, avatars. Now, most all of this stuff come from these are the basics across the design system. Yeah. There is no component I have to build that is going to be different. So I have custom components, yeah, that are a bit different from the base library that we have, but essentially they still take data or they still take values from what I have. So let's say I go to let me kind of put it this way. I should open now. Let's say I go to my alert dialog. Yeah. Now, hold on, go to alert dialog. So now you would see this is essentially a card, but it has our primary button and it has the secondary button. It's still a core component, but essentially it takes in just the base things you have. It just has two buttons and text with the card. That's essentially it. So I feel like we kind of overcomplicate it and feel like okay, we need to no, you have your basic set out. The basic stuff is there for you. It's just like okay, let's say for example, you don't want your let's say I go to buttons for example now. I could have now in terms of my buttons now, you see I have different types of buttons I use. But these are used across the entire product. Even if it's a custom component, the custom component, if it has a CTE, it's going to use this. Most custom components you have are usually a combination of your base components most of the time. So usually a combination of your base components, unless there is something. I feel like it's a very edge case for you to have something that is totally different. Like it's a very edge case. So in terms of the concept of a side project, now for most side projects, you might not need to go as far as building a full doc like this. Now it depends on the scope of the project. Yeah. If the client said, okay, fine, I want a full design system, you can decide to build a full scale design system. For most businesses, for your MVP, the basic MVP for the most part, depending on how large the product is, you can probably work with your base component library. I feel like that could be enough. And your base component library still has the basic parts of things you need. So I don't think there's anything that's going to be fully custom. So I would say you're creating components based off of what you already have in your library. So your engineering team is not essentially building custom components from scratch. They're just essentially combining what you have, which is exactly what you're doing on Figma. You're combining your atoms to get a new component. That's exactly what's happening.
That's interesting. So, to me, I hope that that answers your question because that answered mine. Thank you very much, Michael. Real quick, I know we're out of time, but we have a couple more to go. So I hope you're still good. I
Yes,
want
I'm
to know this question is question on everybody's mind. Everybody on this call has question in their mind, and I'm going to ask for people because you don't talk. Michael, do you think that with the way that tech is going, AI is going to replace designers? Especially because I don't know why I saw something last month where there's a tool that can build design systems for you with AI. I saw it and I was just I know that the accuracy will not be 100%. I know that in terms of UX and other auditing things that we consider, it won't be the same. But I am surprised at the rate that AI is going. So, do you think that we should be looking for another career path? In other words,
I don't. So, um, I think this is a very very tricky question. It's a trick question. So here's what I would say. I feel like AI is going to AI is going to r- remain a tool. Yeah, it's going to remain a tool. And the reason I said it's going to remain a tool is now of course there are those things there are those if your role in a company is something that can be automated. Yeah. And there are two of you that are doing it. There's a likelihood that one person is going to be laid off, unfortunately. That's how things are. Because they would expect the other person that is better, person is going to be able to use the AI to automate other parts to move faster. The whole concept of AI is just to be able to automate stuff and move faster. So even while I was writing the docs for this design system, if I wrote this stuff from scratch completely, I would be stressed out. So what I did was okay, I had a particular structure in mind. So if I have any values, I just okay, fine, write the docs for this based off of what I give you. and it's able to give me faster. I'm able to move way faster. Now, this is me building a design system solo. A full team would have more flexibility. Yeah. So in terms of AI replacing designers, I think with AI now, what it means that with AI around, what it means that it means that products now need to take design more seriously. Products need to take design more serious because the, the the question will now be what's the difference between your app and something I can go to V0 and type it to build out. Now design is usable, design is thoughtful, design is how I feel like design everything around us is designed. Um so it means that extra craft, that extra feeling that you want the product to have. It puts you I would say for AI, it puts designers in a place where if you genuinely want to build stuff, you're in a very good spot. Because in terms of AI replacing design, I think we are seeing stuff happening in real time. Those that are probably facing the issue now are right now is engineers, especially if you're a junior engineer. Yeah, I can't imagine how your life is at the moment. Because it must be hell. No, because literally, so I kind of look at it in a very funny way because I use a lot of AI tools. I see what they can do, and for for me as a designer, what it does is I feel like it puts me in a place where you are not the idea guy anymore. You're no longer the idea guy. You're hey, I have an idea. You want to build it, which means it's there. And I tell designers, I feel like we shouldn't be scared. It just I feel like those that are probably those that would likely be scared if you got into design mostly for the money per se. I know you really enjoy this stuff. Yeah. It will get to a point you be like, I'm not sure I want to do this again. But if you genuinely love what you do, because one thing about design is I don't know I don't know about that, but seeing what you just conceptualize in your head. You know, I feel like the feeling of having a blank canvas, like you usually had a blank canvas, yeah, and you move from a blank canvas to hey, I designed this to hey, I built this. So there's this, I don't know how that people feel about it. I'm like, I feel like there's a lot you can do as a designer right now. And because you're a designer, you're able to empathize with how you're able to have empathy for users. You're able to think through your entire design process. You're able to understand how to design products. Yeah. So I think let me share my screen. There's something I try to build. Yeah. So now I haven't built like a how do I put it like a desktop app before. Let me just share this quickly. So hold on. So if I share um l- let me know if you can see this. So this started out this just started out as a thought. I was thinking, okay, what would it feel like if there was an AI video editor that you could use to how would I put it? Use to write a script and it creates the whole video for you. This started off as me just thinking about it. I had no idea how it was going to look like. I moved to Figma. After I was done with Figma, I entered the whole I entered I entered the course to build. Yeah. And again, for me, it's a bit easier for me because I have some dev experience. So for those that are a bit new to do so stuff, I'll say can you use tools like V0 and the rest. But the whole concept is this: I was able to build this stuff without having any. I have not built a desktop before. This is my first one. And for me to go as far as trying to build something as complex like this a year ago or 2 years back, this would be impossible. Like it's literally impossible. I have to wait for a team of devs and be like, okay, fine. Uh, can you help me build this? How much am I going to pay you? All of that. So again, the cost of software is decreasing. The cost of software is decreasing. Now, so if you're a designer, I would say it's time to the question is moving to what are you going to build? What do you want to build? What do you want to be? Because so this stuff is essentially you stay in a project. You see, everything is totally functional. So I could say this is uh Alison Reina UI. Yeah, yeah, just do Alison Reina. But now you select whether it's an animation. Again, all of this is just you see the models you want to create with, auto generate, manual, probably write type something here randomly because it's not linked. One, you have a full scene. Again, I this is concept. I literally just built this and I did not I've not built a desktop app before. So whenever I see people worried about it, I'm like, no, you shouldn't be worried. Now it's put in a spot where your own mindset is okay. Do I need to do freelancing? Do I need to build stuff? Do I need to work full time? So it provides you with three options as a creative person. You're not stuck. The only thing that will probably be draining is, of course, if you build stuff, you have to push it. I feel like that's the whole point. But I feel like it puts you at a space where if someone that is not a designer tries to design this stuff or tries to build something like this, obviously it's going to be a bit different. Yeah, they will not think about it the same way you would think about it as a designer. So here I could say, okay, let's say I want to create a character. I could say, okay, let's say Alison. It knows to create the character and add this to the storyboard. If I go to storyboard, you see here. So again, I feel like there is a lot of things you can do as a designer. You shouldn't really be worried about. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't really be worried about AI taking your job. There's a lot of things you can do. It's a tool. It's always going to be a tool. Again, for companies will likely cut down on cost because obviously they want to save money. But if you're that person that they know, hey, you're a designer and you can use these tools as well, it puts you at a spot where you are able to do a lot. So, and this is just one of the things I just tried to build out. But at the end of the day, the whole context is this. The whole context is this: is you're able to build stuff and you're able to design, and a designer will always have an edge above those that just enter ChatGPT and type randomly. You design something is functional, but is it usable? Is there any thought process behind it? What are those type? What's what's that experience that will make you say, I want to use Netflix. I don't like Prime. I want to use Bolt. I don't like Uber. I want to use this. I don't want to use that. I want to use. I think the most common one is I want to use uh Apple Music. I don't use YouTube Music. I don't use Spotify. So now these are the tiny parts of products experiences. Again, all of them play music. All of them play music. It just comes down to okay, what is that feeling you're giving customers now? So anyone can randomly go to Visual, spin up something. Now, the what differentiates your product now is the design, the thought behind it. So I feel like it's if you're a very creative person, this is the time that you should be the most happiest person. Because right now you're in a spot where I want to build something. I'm not waiting for engineering. Sorry for any engineers on this call, but I'm just saying. You're able to just build stuff. Yeah. Again, obviously you need engineering help at a certain point. Yeah. But at the base level, you can go as hard as you want to go. Again, just don't be scared. If you're a designer, I would say don't be scared. It's just a tool. It always be a tool. The only thing again is going to obviously make the job hunting as hard as hell because the barrier to entry is now like at the top. You need to be at your A game. You need to be at your A game if you're going to really do something really stand out because everybody's building, so everybody's designing, everybody's doing support. So just that point in your career where you need to just don't do just only Figma. That's what I would say. If your work just ends in Figma, please, for the love of God, learn other tools. Learn other tools. Because obviously, maybe they could build an AI that can automate Figma designs and all of that. But the thing now is, I think before we get to that point, although I've seen like AI tools that are trying to focused on design. I'm seeing tools that most tools now are just trying, they're mostly focused on building. Yeah. But I'm seeing tools that are slowly coming up that are trying to be focused on design. Like I think I've seen one from Relium where it's able to create a wireframe, goes to Webflow and all of that. And I'm like, okay, okay, it's happening. But the question is, at the end of the day, if you actually look at things, yeah, businesses, your average businesses, your day-to-day businesses that are not tech businesses, that are not software businesses, they don't know how to, see. I feel like this AI stuff, 99% of the world doesn't know what's happening yet. They don't know what's about to hit them yet. We that we're in this space, we ahead, we know what's happening. So someone that works in customer service now might not know what's happening. But oh, one day they have a call and they say, okay, hey, sorry, you want to lay you off. Like, what happened? I've been doing my job since. No, there are AI agents now that can make phone calls. So again, we are way ahead. You're way ahead. You have the information. You know what to do. It's more like someone has told you something is going to happen. You're seeing it, and you say you don't want to adapt. Again, the way the industry moves is you think about it, you adapt, and make sure I'm the person. So even if a company wants to build AI agents to replace people, yeah, you would be at a spot where your role isn't that replaceable per se. It's going to be, it's possible, yeah, but it's going to take like extra effort for them to have something that can kind of automate you out of your role. But yeah, as I would say, I could probably go on and on since it's AI, but let's just keep things short.
Yeah, that was like I would really advise anybody on this call to go back to this video and just, even if you don't want to go back to anything, just this last question that I asked him, I would recommend that you go and listen to the game because AI is not even your only op, to be honest. If you look at the market now, there are so many Figma competition that the only issue is or visibility. They do better than Figma in first pricing and then workflow and then process. Figma is getting buggy. Like now, Figma is down. Now, talking to you now, I cannot open Figma on my laptop. So there's so many competition. There's so many things that you need to consider, and Figma is not gonna help you in the next. Like what he has said is probably what you need to consider if you want to continue in this path for the next 5 years. Like you need to honestly learn other tools because Figma is not enough. Basically, I think I will also add that like instead of focusing on, I think tools are great, but I think another thing that will actually stand designers out, designers that actually design products people actually want to use, like the UX part of it. Maybe I'm talking because I don't know yet, though, but I don't think that any AI can 100% replicate that user experience that products need. I'll circle back to this in the next 1 year, but right now I don't think that it is actually like very possible. So I think if you focus on design from a UX perspective, I'm not saying ignore UI
Yeah,
and like learn the business of design. I think you'll probably be able to stand out more in the market than designers who don't know how design are basically like tying. So yeah, that's for me. We are way behind time, but I have one last question. Actually, before I ask you that question, I was supposed to do a product demo and show the wonderful people on this call what we've been building Arena UI for the last few months. But Figma is not opening. I said I'm not the one. Figma is not opening my laptop and I can't share, unfortunately. But I'm gonna give you a verbal rundown of what's been happening. We've been cooking repeatedly, like we've been, it's a lot of work that's been going on in the last few months. And most of it, the work has been tied around having systems and components that help people move things faster, move things better. Whether you're a product team or you're a freelancer or you're a dev, you're trying to get one or two ideas, done. We are basically building a product that's going to serve other products. And unfortunately, I don't have evidence for this, but I'm not lying, I promise, believe me. So I was supposed to do a demo. I'm so sorry. I don't know how this is happening right now in this moment, but I can't share my screen because my Figma is not loading. I'm trying to load it for the last 1 hour, 30 minutes, and it's not loading. But I will do that some other time, probably when it's up. I'll probably do something on Twitter or LinkedIn. I don't know. But we have created a wait list. We're launching really soon. And in addition to what I just said, we have a very major announcement that I'm not at liberty to share on this call. But it's good, very exciting. It's a really big deal for us, Arena, and I feel like it's something that will also help the community as well. So you're going to see the link to join the wait list very soon. I don't know who's going to handle that. But join the wait list, follow Reina, follow me everywhere so that when we share the news, you're up to date and you see what's happening. I hope that you're excited as I am when you hear it because it's a really, really, really big deal and it's major validation for all the work I've been putting in the last in the last few months. So finally, it's coming to life. I know if you follow me, you probably see me post a couple of times that when I launch, when I launch, when I launching. We are finally launching like for real, and the delay has been caused by a couple of things that we've been doing in the background, and finally it has materialized. So we're there. We're there. Thank you guys for riding with us all through. And it's still day one. I'm looking forward to what we get to do in the near future and having you guys work with us as well. Okay. So Emmanuel, Michael, my final question is hmm, we have people on this call who have joined. I think most of them are designers, but I believe we also have a few devs. I've seen a dev on this call. I saw him in the comment section. So you have a few devs and many product people who have joined in to listen to you this evening. What is one takeaway that you want people to leave this call with?
Yeah. So I think what I would say is I would say I'll try to put it in the context of design system first.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would kind of leaning into like what's happening in the current ecosystem. Yeah. So again, for design systems, you just understand that the concept of design system is just to ensure consistency. And initially, when you start to build out your design system, it might feel like there's nothing happening. Yeah. Um, it's when you're done with it that you kind of start to see the impact. So don't start calculating impact early on. Uh, give your system, because there's this thing that happens in teams where you've implemented something, you've not gotten enough feedback or data. You start to go back and start to make changes. You need to make sure you get enough feedback before you start to then make data-driven decisions. Data-driven decisions. The data never lies. The data never lies. That's one key factor. Data never lies. Always think about the data first, the metrics. Then in terms of AI, everyone is scared. I feel like everyone is scared. We use the tool, but we are low key scared. And it's I don't it's a slippery slope, especially if you're I know for new designers it's a lot. I'm probably less scared because I think I've been through multiple changes in the ecosystem.
Exactly.
So I think the whole point is it's going to be going to be very hard to get junior roles now. Um, and if you see internships, you're lucky, very lucky. Because combined with the whole AI stuff, the economy is crazy. The economy is
Mhm.
crazy, and especially if you're based in Nigeria and you're applying for roles outside, that mental the things you have to go through is a lot. Yeah. So especially because companies are like saying, why should we hire you if we could use AI? That's the whole conversation that's happening. So I would say just try to build. See this as a year where you build stuff, where you actually sit down and say, I want to build stuff for people to
Mhm.
use. Yeah. You'll find building stuff more fun than actually see left to me if I had an option left to me, I would rather spend time building stuff I like for myself. Because the very funny thing is I think
I-
when people one question people always ask is I want to build stuff, but what do I build? And I always tell them the easiest way to think of what to build is what's that problem you face every day? You're not alone. There are tons of people having that same problem. So how can you fix it? It because people are always thinking that it has to be rocket science. No, what? Look, try to introspect a bit. Ask yourself, what's that thing that happens every day that I feel like if I had an app that or I have something that does this stuff, it would make my life a bit easier. It could be something as simple as okay, um, every time I'm in a meeting, yeah, there. Let's say for example, every time I'm in a meeting, I can't take notes because I'm distracted, or it's always hard to take notes, and I need to track it. There may be tools for that, but of course you can add your own fun twist to it. There's nobody that says because this stuff exists, it doesn't mean because I feel like what stops people from building is one, you think too far about what you want to build. Two, you say another app exists, but so why should I build it? There's no there's Spotify there are actually apps that do basically the same thing. There is both Uber, InDrive. See, they all exist. There's nobody that says you can't build yours. Now, the only thing now is you just need to, of course, you need to check. Okay, are you building this stuff because you're trying to build it for fun, or are you building this stuff because you want to make money? Obviously, if you're trying to build stuff if you want to make money, you need to look at the market a bit to know. Okay, fine, this is a personal problem I have, but I think people are going to pay for it. Or people are not going to pay for it. And there's this mindset I would say we tend to have, especially if you're based in Nigeria, unfortunately, because the way the ecosystem is here is because of the economy, a lot of people don't like to pay for software here. That's it. Apps. It's a hard ask for you to ask a Nigerian to pay for an app. So the only thing that they can probably pay for is things that they use day to day. Uber, when I think before Uber came in, if you wanted to like book a ride, I don't think there was any app that except for them. I think it was Uber then both that came in. And if that stuff you're building makes life one step better for that person, most people won't mind paying for it. That's the core part. No matter where they are. So the only thing that would make it easy or hard for them to pay it, let's say the price person and how much the person's earning. So don't be scared to build. Uh if you have an idea, spend time with these AI tools. The more you prompt, you get better at it. Because what's going to happen is you get to a spot where and I'm seeing companies already doing this stuff where they'll ask you. I think I've seen two posts. I've seen two posts, yeah, where someone was hiring, and at the end of the post, he added ability to build with V0 and Cursor needed. Now these are AI tools.
Wait. When did
I-
this thing come out? I'm looking for ability to build. We are still looking for
so
tutorial ability to build with. God, I beg.
so again, it's something that is happening, yeah, and the shift is slowly happening. So that's why I think I'm seeing a conversation where I'm seeing people asking if they need design engineers because a designer already that already knows how to do stuff with code, they can how would I put it? They'll obviously be way faster if they're using how would I put it? If they're using all these AI tools, yeah. But another designer that may not be so good at code, they can probably use the AI tools better and implement faster. So it's a very dicey. So I would say right now we are in a very dicey situation. Nobody knows what can actually happen. But one thing is sure, software is moving from okay. Right now, I think I had I had one experience. I wanted to download some videos, yeah, to my PC, and all the sites I was looking at were showing me multiple ads. So what I had to do was just enter Visual, build my own, download it, and kept moving. So now it's more of why should I use a software I can go and build it?
Can be my own.
So that's the point. So again, if what you're building is something someone can spin up in 5 minutes. It's
Mm,
very tricky.
okay.
So just again, like I said, it's time for designers to think more as a builder. Think more as a builder. I don't, even though I have dev experience, I don't tend to call myself a dev because I feel I have imposter syndrome if I call myself a dev, because I know I'm probably not going to be as good as someone that does code full time.
Mm-hmm.
That's obvious, yeah. Which is why I tend to call myself. I just say I'm a builder. I build stuff, and I can design. I can go for. I think the best part, the fun part about it is being able to conceptualize an idea in your head as a designer and being able to build it yourself. I feel like that's the best. I don't think there's any feeling that beats that. Just you think about it, go from blank canvas, you've designed it in Figma, you've moved to Figma, you've built it. Before you know, if hopefully once the AI to get better, you're able to even move way faster. You've built it. So now it's now more of I have I have an idea. You have no excuse why you did not build it.
Mm-hmm.
So that we usually always tell ourselves, there's this dev. It's too expensive to build all of that, but you can build a quick MVP if you're very serious. 2 months or 3 months, you have an MVP with the basic functionality, very basic one, still looking good since you're a designer. But a dev will probably not think about it. A lot of devs will probably not think about the design part. So now, but obviously there'll be devs that are design oriented. Those that are design oriented will likely just take the same process, think about it. But those that are not design oriented will just build like that. So now this is not to say I'm not here saying AI is going to replace devs, because I know there are some conversations we might be having. Now, again, you still need dev knowledge. You still need development knowledge actually to move fast. Yeah. But the whole context is it's generally time for you to build stuff. Just think about it and build it. There's nothing stopping you. I think that's what I would say. I think that's probably my final take. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was great. Somebody said, "I think we need a part two." I concur. Yes, you have a second version of this because this was really insightful. Thank you guys for riding with us for 5 minutes past the time it's supposed to end. I'm sure that it was worth your time. If you don't take anything else from this call, first thing is, as a designer, you need to move past the idea of being a pixel pusher. Figma is not the beginning and end of your workflow, your process. Second thing is that data is important. If there's no evidence to back it up, we're not doing anything about it. Third thing is, move your mindset more to a builder's mindset. And this is just even beyond knowing how to code. Also think about the business side of things. How do your design decisions affect what would be revenue? We already heard that we don't like to pay, or we are very hard to convince to pay for things online because they need to actually like show that this is something that I cannot do without, or I'd rather not do without. So while you're thinking of problems to fix or solutions to build, also think about the business side of things, because again, the whole point of what we are doing, I don't care about passion. I mean, I care about passion, but let's be very honest. The whole point of everything we are doing is money. So thank you. Anyways, thank you, Michael, for being with us. I really, really, really appreciate. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for joining in. Again, I apologize that the demo didn't happen. I don't know why Figma decided to be down at this particular moment, but I will do something else on YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever, probably during the next week. Again, thank you for being here and for letting us grace your screens for an hour and 45 minutes. I hope that you have an amazing weekend, and I will see you on the other side. Bye.
Right.